Hi everybody. So for class today, we are going to actually continue our entry 8 in learning about cells and cell structure and kind of applying this to looking at cells underneath the microscope. So our goal today is to finish entry number 8, and then next class we're going to have a short quiz just over cell structure, so knowing the different parts and what they do. So I'm going to click into the same entry that we started last time. You can see I just kind of scrolled down to where it says day 2, and we're going to focus in on how cells are organized. And so I put in a little cartoon. You can kind of see some of the functions, or based on the functions, why the different parts are saying what they're saying. Just kind of to recap, maybe some of the things that you put in your table related to the organelles. The nucleus, which is our first part here, is the key part that holds our genetic material. It's where the DNA is stored, and that's kind of its major function. And because of that, it's the brain of the cell. It tells all the other cell parts what to do. The ribosome is the site of protein synthesis. So this is where proteins themselves are made. Now the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. That is where cellular respiration takes place, or at least most of cellular respiration takes place. And we already learned previously that's where the cell can take things like glucose that we eat and turn it into usable energy, ATP. Then we have chloroplasts, which are found only in plant cells and other photosynthetic organisms. So what that means is they do photosynthesis because they are able to harness the energy of light in the sun to make food or make glucose. So chloroplasts are the place where photosynthesis takes place. Some of the other ones you guys learned, these first two are really the endoplasmic reticulum, which there's a rough one and a smooth one, and that combined with the Golgi apparatus. I really just want you to know that that's the place, that's the packaging center. Like it's the proteins are made, and it's the conveyor belt slash the Amazon delivery system that packages it all up, puts the address where it needs to go, and then gets it where it needs to go. So that's really what the membrane system collectively within the cell does. And then there's other things like lysosomes, which is basically the garbage can of the cell. Its job is to break down different things. Okay, so that's kind of a recap and some of the major pieces that maybe you had on your table on your A page. Today, we're going to learn about a couple other things. Cell size and why cells are so small. How do we actually see cells if they are so small? And then the different types of cells that we have in our body. There's tons of different types. If you remember the video that I showed you last time, there's a lot. And then we're going to draw some pictures. So that's exciting. So how big are cells? Well, and you can add this to your B page notes if you'd like, just kind of the white on the right here. If you want to add that to the top of your B page, you can. But a typical cell is way too small. Like you can't look at your arm and be like, I see specific cells. You as a person are made of about 30 to 40 trillion cells. That's a lot. And if you look at the table or chart, I guess, you can think about different size things. The smallest thing that the naked eye can see is somewhere around like a human egg, or 100 micrometers. If you are to hold your thumb and your pointer finger just as close as you can to each other without touching, that's about a millimeter, 1 mm. And so you can think of getting, orders of magnitude smaller than that. A cell is somewhere between 10 and 100 micrometers in size. And so we can't see that with our eyes, therefore we have to employ the use of other things. like microscopes, which I'll talk about in a second. But the reason why cells are this small is that we would not be able to survive at all if we were just one giant cell. Think about if you are one cell, all the energy and nutrients our cells need to keep everything going. If we had just one monster cell, just getting enough energy and then getting it from one place to another in that one giant cell is a problem. Because let's say I'm one giant cell and my food's coming in through my mouth, but I gotta get all that energy down to my foot super quick. It's not gonna happen. You gotta transport it, and so it takes time. And so I have this little video here that kind of highlights that idea.
Some organisms are big and some are small, but they're all made up of cells. Some tiny organisms, like bacteria, are made up of a single cell, and all the materials they need must be supplied via their cell membrane. Large organisms, like us humans, are made up of millions of cells. To get the important stuff, like oxygen, to all of the cells that make up our bodies, we have a transport system that takes things to where we need them. We rely on the blood to transport what we need to where we need it. But why are larger organisms made of many cells, rather than a single giant cell? And why do we need such advanced transport systems, rather than simply allowing materials like oxygen to diffuse from the air through our skin to all of our body cells? The problem is surface area. Consider two cubes of different sizes. The smallest cube is 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter, and so has faces each with an area of 1 centimeter squared. And there are 6 faces, so it has a total surface area of 6 centimeters squared. The larger cube is 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters, so each face is 4 centimeters squared. With 6 faces, it has a total surface area of 24 centimeters squared. So, the larger cube has a larger surface area, but the larger cube also has a larger volume. We need to compare the surface area of each cube with its own volume. The small cube has a volume of 1 by 1 by 1, which is 1 centimeter cubed. It has 6 square centimeters of surface area for every 1 cubic centimeter of volume. We can say that it has a surface area to volume ratio of 6 to 1. If we do the same for the larger cube, we can say that it has a volume of 2 times 2 times 2, which equals 8 centimeters cubed. This ratio of 24 square centimeters of surface area to every 8 cubic centimeters of volume can be simplified to 3 to 1. 6 to 1 is bigger than 3 to 1. It's obvious that the smaller cube has a larger surface area to volume ratio. Let's imagine that these cubes are living cells that need oxygen to survive. For oxygen to spread throughout the cells, it must diffuse through the surface. As the small cell has more surface area relative to its volume, every part of that volume can be supplied with oxygen at a faster rate compared with the larger cell. It would take too long for the center of the larger cell to be supplied with what it needs. If a large organism were made of a single cell, the exchange of materials simply wouldn't happen fast enough. This is what limits the maximum size of a cell. Since our bodies have to be made of many tiny cells, it's important that the materials those cells need are transported directly to them. This is the reason why we have a circulatory system, with a really strong pump, that is the heart, constantly shifting nutrients in the blood throughout our body.
Okay, so hopefully that, you don't need to know the math or anything, but hopefully you kind of understand that surface area and having a lot of it compared to how large or the volume of a cell is really important for transport purposes and just being able to get everything where it needs to go in the time that it needs to get there. So that's why there are no super giant single-celled organisms, and that's why we're made of 30 to 40 trillion cells, because we need to, utilize a lot of energy and nutrients in a lot of places at the same time. And so how do we see these things? As I kind of mentioned before, we can't see this with our eye. So we use special microscopes to be able to see what we're going to see. And so there's different kinds of microscopes, and they, range from the traditional one on the left here that you've probably seen in a science classroom to super expensive, super amazing, fancy microscopes that can zoom in a lot farther. So the ones that we typically use are called light microscopes. Those are on the left, and they can kind of zoom in up to about 15,000 times magnification of what you would normally see. So the cells, for example, in this picture are 15,000 times larger than what they are in real life. But it uses light to shine on the slide that's right here on the stage. And you can use these, what are called objectives, here in black, and kind of switch to higher and higher power. These are nice because you can just take a piece of whatever you're trying to look at and put it right there on a slide underneath. Sometimes we can even look at living organisms underneath light microscopes, but it doesn't get you super, super zoomed in. On the right, if we want to go farther, we use what we call electron microscopes. And these use kind of the energy of electrons bouncing off of things to be able to see at higher magnification. And there's different kinds. There's scanning ones and electronic ones and so on. But here you can kind of see some examples of different cells that you could see zoomed in. For example, these disc ones in the picture are blood cells. They kind of look like donuts with a pushed-in center. But those can get up to, 1,000,000 times magnification, and that's how we can really see the detail in a lot of the different things that we try to see and learn about cells. So, what types of cells can we see? I want you to think for a minute, and during class, I'm going to have the class chat or type in the chat box as many different types of cells as you can think of in your body. For example, one might be skin cells. But not all of us, not all those 30 to 40 trillion cells are skin cells. What other types of cells do we have? And then I want you to think about, what cells don't we have? For example, plants don't have all the same cells as we do. What do they have that we don't? Or thinking about what they need to do and be able to do, what would they have that we don't? Okay, so I do have this little video here on the right about specialized cells. And it's about 9 minutes long, and it talks about all the different specialized types of cells that might exist. So in the slideshow, I want you to click on that and go ahead and watch it versus me just playing it right now. Because I think it highlights a lot of those special types of cells. And you can even see some of them in the picture here about what they are. For example, the red one on the right is a blood cell. Okay. And so here are some examples of different types of cells that maybe you got out of the video or that you were able to type in the chat. They're all cells. But I want you to notice that they have very different structures. So they are all cells, but they look very different and unique from one another. And that unique structure gives them the job that they need to do, their function. So again, we're highlighting that idea of different structures allow them to do different functions. And so you might have come up with some of these. There are, I think, 11 different cell types in the body, but that's also pretty general. We get a lot more specific types. For example, there's different types of blood cells and so on and so forth. But just to give you an idea that cells can kind of specialize and do unique jobs. So what you guys are going to end up doing today is drawing some of those specialized cells in your notebooks on your B page. So on the B page, I want you to kind of set up a a layout similar to what I have here on the page. You're going to pick 4 different cells, and I'll explain that in a minute, to draw. And so you're going to write what it is at the top. Then you're going to draw a picture in the area of what you are seeing underneath the microscope. I would like you to label it with all of the cell parts that you kind of are able to see as best you can. So please understand that these are not super zoomed in images where you're going to be able to see every single part from your A page flap in each one of these cells. You might only be able to see 1 or 2 things, and that's totally fine. Don't just try to, add labels to add labels. Put in what you can actually see. And then underneath, I want you to see if you can figure out, or at least give an idea of what its job might be. What might the job of that particular cell might be? Or one of the jobs. If you aren't quite sure, just give it a guess. And so you're going to do that for 4 total drawings. And they can't all be the same type. So you must have at least 1 animal and 1 plant cell. So that way they're not all the same, but you have different and unique ones. Okay. Kind of format that a little better. Okay. And so the images that I've put here are on the following slides. There's more than 4, but you're just going to be able to pick 4 at your choice. So for example, here's a banana. Here is a Alodia, which is a specific plant. You can see it in the microscope on the left, but I also have a picture of it on the right. A red onion, yeast, cheek cells. So this is what your cheek cells look like. Cow muscle. Here's some moss. Some nervous cells. Some blood cells. And so I might put in a couple more pictures, but it gives you the idea. You're just going to go through and pick 4 and draw those out on your B page and then put a proposed function. And it's okay if you do some research and Google it also if you'd like. So just to kind of recap for the day, again, if you needed any of those additional resources, whether it's a coloring page or the cell wrap or looking at that video to really understand the different cells and parts of cells, please, please, please take a look at those. So today's main goal was to talk about cell size and why cells are so small, and learning about different types of cells and how they can become specialized. And then you got a little bit of practice at drawing some different types of cells. So the homework for today is to finish out entry number 8. So you should be able to totally get everything done from the A page and B page of entry 8. And then next class, we're going to have a quiz over cell structure. Thanks for listening.